Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
How are we?
I hope everyone's good. I hope everyone can hear as well. We should wait for a couple more people to join in as we're ready to start.
Good, good. Everyone's making it. Uh,
Couple of new faces.
oh, good. Esteban, you're recording. Yeah, we'll literally just wait for like 1 minute, let everyone join, and we'll kick it off as well. And we'll let everyone know how this goes. Most people have been here. I know a few people haven't. But again, we'll just wait. How are we all? How is everyone?
Everyone's typing.
Fabulous. Good, good. Great. Good. Fine. Good.
George just woke up from a nap.
Yeah, it's I know for a lot of people it's first thing in the morning. Being in the lovely British Isles, it's pitch black darkness here at the middle now. Now that it's the afternoon. Let's see what time we're on. I think we can kick it off.
Let's start.
Yeah, we'll start now. Again, everyone knows how this goes. Uh, yeah, if you want to speak in the conversation, all you need to do is raise your hand. If you can see at the top, there's like a little hand signal, and then you can come on the stage here. Ha ha ha. You can get on the stage here, and you can speak as much as you want. You can converse back and forth. But obviously, if you just want to sit in the audience, you want to stay there and just listen, that's completely fine as well. It's up to you. And you can always, again, use the side conversation, whatever. People can come in and out. I know a couple of people will be joining in and out throughout the conversation. But
Yeah.
for the meantime, we'll kick it off. So this month's book was From Hell by Alan Moore, which for those that, well, you've all read it, but for those that haven't read it before, quick summary. It is a perhaps fictionalized version of the Jack the Ripper case and the Whitechapel murders, arguably the most infamous true crime case in Western culture, at least probably in British culture. And it's done in the Alan Moore lens of this tied history, wherein Jack the Ripper is not the Jack the Ripper necessarily that we know, although he decides to place it in one of the primary theories of Dr. William Gull, the royal physician for Queen Victoria at the time, which is a theory that some people still believe holds water. Some people have discredited it. Yes, Jay, I do say perhaps fictionalized because, again, I'm sure it's something that we can discuss if many of you decided to look up the case of Jack the Ripper, because it is an ongoing case. If you ever find yourself in London, you can still do the Jack the Ripper tour, which we have yet to do, but I'm sure next time we go down, we'll probably work on it. Yes, so do you want to
Yeah,
kick off talking
I
about it?
I would love to kick off talking about it. I want to start talking a little bit more about particularly how Alan Moore works with his scripts and with comics, because I think we chose From Hell because this is a very novelistic comic.
Mm.
More than many other comics we could have chosen. This is like a tome in of it in itself. Um, Alan Moore has a very distinct style. Even when he is working with like a diverse amount of comic artists, his style still gets through like very, very vividly.
Mm.
But I think in From Hell particularly, he had more of a collaborative approach, which is very different than what he usually does.
With Eddie Campbell.
Yeah, and I'm talking about Eddie Campbell. And when you see something like The Killing Joke, and you know the story about Watchmen having this massive scripts, even though he was working with like legendary Dave Gibbons, he still has this like long, overdrawn full scripts, which are called, right? Which is when a comic writer would do and give excruciating detail for the panelists to work with. So we both have the black and white version, and I think that's when you can fully get the grasp of Eddie Campbell's style in that black and white version. More than, I mean, I know that historically, a colorist and an inker would be two different people. Yeah, and in the color version, Campbell himself decided that he was gonna do the colorization, which is very very unique for Western comics.
I find it interesting though specifically for this
Mm.
because this is one where manga, for instance, you can envision how it would look colorized, but with something like this, it seems so destined to be in black and white. I mean,
I would agree.
even thematically, we're going to discuss all this, but thematically, we have these ideas of the moon and the sun, Apollo and Dionysus, and even this idea of like talking about the fourth dimension and whatnot. That it really plays into this idea of light and dark, of man and woman. There's like this polar opposite that's in how would you say, that's compounded over history and has began to increase when the reality is, William Gould discusses this at one point, that like the membrane between our brain that separates the left and right hemisphere is something that's what's compounded over time,
Mm.
whereas in the past it was just such a like a thin gristle that separated the two. And I think that the format of the comic actually displays that there is like that we actually do live in a kind of binary world of black and white, of light and dark, which
Mm.
I find it very interesting, the choice that this novel, this comic at all could be in color.
I agree with you, but I also feel like Eddie Campbell's style lends itself very well to that scribbly Victorian hatching look of the
Yeah.
pen and ink. And you know, he he used actual pen and ink, so he used crow quill, which it's a type of nib that mimics the goose nib of back in the days. So it gives that feel of the consistency between the lines. So the difference with, for example, like a Japanese nib from a manga when you're working with black and white is that it will taper the line by the end. So you have like that script, like that less calligraphic approach and more like a free flowing approach with Japanese style nib. And a crow quill will give you a more consistent line from top to bottom.
Okay.
So it's more of a calligraphy style of nib. And the reason I'm saying this is because it was my inkling from the beginning that he used a crow quill, because one is a style that it calls back to the impressionist 19th century style, of that Victorian style of those pen magazines that used to circulate, and you see something like even the most iconic Jack the Ripper illustration, which is done. They used to printing things in etching as well. So like it's just a way of printing, and it's a way of like democratizing like how rapidly an image can circulate. And the hatching in this is so fundamental to the way the story is told imagetically. And I was like so happy to see that he actually used the crow quill, because it was like this is such a master's touch to give that. So in the end, when you see in the background, you see that those straight lines, they're like very precise. They don't have that flowing characteristic of what you see in a manga. So it gives that very a printed look, which like takes you back to Victorian era. So it's not just any scribble. It's a scribble that is very purposeful.
Mm.
Yeah, I love that particularly, and the black and white shows and shines really well with that, more than the color, I say. Jake wants to jump in.
Jay, you're the first one in. Take the reins.
I'll just keep on the color because I think I don't want to go anywhere else. Do you think the remaster, some different kind of remaster, would be good? Because the current remaster, I think I mentioned before in the chat, but it's quite childish. I think it feels like it was painted on top of, and it doesn't really match the previous style. So I don't know, like it adds a layer of explanation. It adds a layer like, oh, this character wears a brown hat, so this is the one character. So I think it helps in some way. And I think some scenes where it's all red, where there's some accent on complete brutality, complete intensity or something in red works really well. But in other places, it doesn't. So I was thinking, like, do you think there is some different remasters that you would like to see? For example, I would maybe suggest black and white plus occasional color, just a bit here and there. Or you think it should be?
I think Yeah, I think what you said is perfect. Like, because I also feel like the panels in which he's just using red, they work so well. And this idea of like just the detail, like adding a little bit of detail of information. Because I actually think that the black and white, just of the original, gives such a claustrophobic look. And I think it's interesting when you're talking about a story about conspiracy that not necessarily the quality of the line is so clear. I think it jives very well with the concept, like everything like conceptually works really well together. So I think the color, I do agree, like it almost looks like this layer on top of the ink because it is. It was colorized way after, right? But in traditional, say that's funny. Like in Western comics, they usually do a colorist is a completely separate person that will come and just colorize the comic. So it feels like painting between the lines type of thing. So I'm not a big fan when it's not completely integrated. You
Yeah,
know?
it doesn't feel integrated. It feels like you put in Photoshop a multiplayer layer on the top. I mean, it feels like they had to fix a bit here and there, but it's just a multiplier layer on top of the original inks.
It looks so.
Childish.
This is going to be a very very niche thing. If anyone has ever played this PC Flash game called oh my god, what is it called? For the life of me, I can't remember. It's like Visage or something like that. It's one word, and it's basically I'm gonna find it after. But when it's like you go into a room and there's like a couple that are having an argument at dinner, and it really looks like that. It's like this is what I would expect, like a point and click Flash game from like the mid 2000s to look like.
Yeah.
It doesn't look as professionally done.
But you know what I think it is because when you're talking about hatching, illustration, and pen and ink, the hatching itself, the scribbles, is what gives the value structure of the drawing. So when you think about from lightmost color to the darkmost color, right? So when you do a layer of color on top of that, you're kind of disturbing the hatching in itself because the hatching should be what is given the value structure of the image. So that's why it looks so amateurish because it wasn't integrated fully. So I find it very weird that he was the person that did it because I think it's a weird choice, even for him. Like, because I think it shines so much the fact that it's black and white. But for clarity, maybe.
I mean, I'm just gonna be quiet here because I mean, like, you're more of an expert in this field, so I'll happy to listen. But I will just point out, yes, exactly. If anyone is in the chat, Jacob just posted. That is exactly how for me From Hell looks. It's the same style.
In color, yeah.
Yeah, in color.
It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, you know all about. I mean, you've done hatching and inking before, and obviously you're a better color theorist than I am. So I'm happy to listen here. Like,
But it's just the idea of the structure base that of the drawing, which gives you that like the shadows are already done by the lines. So when you're working with color purposefully, you should be working with values, so dark to light. So
Yeah.
you're already doing that shading with the color, which is natural. That's why it feels so forced. That's why it feels like a layer on top, because it is actually a layer on top.
but
It
is it-
hasn't been fought in the drawing.
But then doesn't that issue arise then because it seems so predominantly I mean like there's not many gradients throughout the novel. It is black and white. So when you
Exactly.
bring color into that, I mean again you're missing out on that gradient aspect. So
The
it does
value
look, so
structure,
it does look
yeah.
really flat, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. The value structure. You're missing out on the value structure, and you're missing on the play of the 19th century style penmanship, which he uses in the original drawing. Which, when you look at like old illustrations, that very specific style of rendering an image, even in the way, I mean, I find it crazy because Alan Moore, I was looking at Eddie Campbell's blog, and he posts like a couple of pages next to a couple of scripts, and what Alan Moore does is crazy to me because he's envisioning the panels in his head, even though from my knowledge, I don't think Alan Moore draws at all. And he's able to completely give away like the verticality of the image the way he wants it, almost like he has the composition entirely on his brain, even though he doesn't draw. And I think this is a phenomenal skill for someone that doesn't have penmanship to be able to tell someone that draws, because usually there's a very big dissonance when you're working with someone that doesn't know how to draw and they try to tell you how an image should look.
Oh yeah.
It's like very weird, but Alan Moore is able to do that, and it's I think that's a very 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 strong skill, and that's why when you read something like The Killing Joke or Watchmen, which are completely different artists, you still have the feel of a pacing from a comic that is from Alan Moore, which I think the paneling of it is so specific of his style, different from other comic writers, right?
Well, the reality is like Alan Moore's a transgressive artist, even though he's like one of the eponymous artists of graphic novels and of comics now. The reality is he still is very transgressive with the medium. He still approaches it radically different to anyone else. To even the idea of Watchmen being the graphic novel which everyone should read, it's a complete deconstruction of the mythos of the classic superhero comic. I mean, and even in that, there's the famous mirroring chapter that he has of showing Rorschach, which is like mirrored back to front, and he uses the idea of the space in between. You've got the meta narrative of the comic within the comic. His lens is why, like, when you read something like Jerusalem, his actual novel that he wrote, it's still the same lens that he has. When you read that, it's this case of, it's a story set in Northampton, which is where he's from, and it's just this constant meandering in between all levels of history. He's talking about one moment ancient cavemen, and then a modern painter painting a wall, and then the wall starts to speak to him, this history that whispers to him from before. And the next chapter is about like old monarchy, and the next is like working class in the 60s. And it's just as though, but when you read his stuff, none of it feels superfluous. He has an attention to detail, and the thing that he writes about is the things that he knows, and this is his worldview. Whether it is Watchmen or From Hell and anything, you really feel as though, okay, what the reason that his works feel so dense is because it's like what he's doing is he's just using the format of superheroes or the Tale of Jack the Ripper, and just using it to translate an almost absolutist vision of the way an individual might see the world. And it just so happens that it's really interesting because this is a vision of the world that is so, how would you say, it's so lucid, but at the same time it's so ephemeral in the way that he speaks about it.
Yeah, it's the idea of magic that he talks about, isn't it? Like almost like, I mean, he really means it when he says it. Yeah, he means it. Like he's talking about magic in the sense of like almost like casting spells, and the idea that once you describe something or once you have something come to life through words, then you're able to materialize it. And it's interesting that he would do that also by those full scripts, like describing it, and as you said, like this interchangeable like stories, like they kind of like, it's almost like a spiral, like, if I were to describe them because I'm a big visual thinker, so if I'm thinking of a spiral that like keeps flowing around, that would be how I would describe his stories. But at the same time, they are so precise, right? They're so, as you said, lucid.
Yeah.
It's I am a big Alan Moore fan, and I think what he does is he brings a maturity to the medium of comics that I think it's much necessary. And it's interesting that when he's working with Eddie Campbell here, because Eddie also is someone that has a very strong philosophy of, he doesn't want to be just an illustrator, right? He doesn't want to be just someone that is creating images for the sake of creating images himself. I mean, he has a philosophy of creating images in the sense, like, he didn't want, for example, he didn't like comic artists using the terms, borrowing terms from cinema. He didn't want people saying close-ups because he wanted to develop or help develop a language for comics, something that is not borrowed, something that is completely encapsulated in the medium. And I think Alan Moore does that. He elevates the medium of comics, and I think the two together is fantastic.
Yeah. On that note, now that it's been a little while and now that you've all had an opportunity to wake up, by all means, if anyone else wants to come in and just speak their mind on the novel, feel free. If not, we're happy to ramble on here because we've only really spoken about the actual art style. Spencer, being brave, come on in. Where is he?
He'll take a little second, yeah.
Spencer, how are we?
Hello.
Is it done it again? Seriously?
I think you need to go out.
Okay, Spencer, I think you need to leave.
There
we go. There we go.
I was like, there's gonna be something every single time. There's always a tech issue for me. So it was really great hearing you guys talk about all the background information, because all this, like the artistry stuff is stuff I didn't know. This is my second time reading From Hell, and honestly, and I didn't have a lot of experience reading a lot of comics going into Alan Moore in the beginning. Like, I had read like a little bit of manga, and then embarrassingly, like the Watchmen movie came out, and I was like, oh, I bet the graphic novel is really good. Like I hadn't even heard of Alan Moore until the movie came out. That's how bad it was for me. Um, so, but always being acquainted with like, superhero stories, going to watch them was still really interesting. But
Yeah.
um, I love I love all the different perspectives that he brings into From Hell. I know that, you know, I think he recognizes that he's not he's not necessarily telling, like a true story in it. He's, he a lot of that kind of comes through in the like second part of the appendix, where he's talking about all the different ways you can put all the stories together to become, be, being aware that he wants to be a part of the story of the Jack the Ripper stories, I guess.
Yeah.
But it still makes for like this incredible landscape that he gets to use to share all of his insane depth of arcane knowledge. Like that was like chapter 4, where he's doing this tour around London, and you're just like, holy shit, there's all of this going on that
You know.
underneath London. And just like it's just a playground for him to take this knowledge and put it into like into an incredibly mystical story.
Yeah, I think that chapter in particular, because I mean, the thing is that attention to detail with Alan Moore, it's
Yeah.
not just confined to the imaginary world either. It really is like his worldview, his collected knowledge over years, and even to the point, like depending on what edition that you got, at the back of the novel as well, there are maps. And it just shows you, it's like, wait, no, this stuff is actually there. And that's why it's like, I say it's a quote fictionalized story at the same time, and I'm sure we can get into like the actual the Masonic conspiracy of
Yay.
this of the tale as well. But yeah, it really is. It's like at that point you realize, holy shit, it's like this is not a story about Jack the Ripper. This is a story about like the history of all of humanity and how we arrived at Jack the Ripper. And I think that the interesting aspect of the Jack the Ripper story is that it's like it's so I can't remember who defined it, but it's that Jack the Ripper is essentially he's a collage killer because he's the first true crime serial killer. He's got almost a cult of personality about him.
Yeah.
And I think that what Alan Moore is putting forward is like in order to solve the case of Jack the Ripper, you essentially have to solve the case of the entirety of Victorian England.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, I mean, was it gonna, I just love like he also a space for him to get into the mindset of what a serial killer goes through too. I'm not knowledgeable about a lot of true crime. Like I didn't know about the whole like the aura phase and stuff like that, and how he can relate that to all the mystical visions that he has. And of course, like knowing Alan Moore, like he is a very mystical person. He does take the idea of spell casting really seriously, and so I know he probably has like a personal vendetta against the Freemasons, so he's fine to like literally cast spells against them. I mean, like the appendix, there's like this funny section where he literally said, what does he say? Like, um, I have no reason for supposing this to be true, and indeed only brought the bricks into the scene so that I would have another opportunity to say a malignant and unfounded things about the Freemasons. But it. I do really take the idea of it being a spell quite seriously, because like that leaves an impression on you. And I even like it even coming into my life personally, I had someone who was associated with my family who approached me to ask if I wanted to join the Freemasons, and I had already read From Hell, and the impression from Hell on me was like so strong that I was like, no, I'm good, thank you.
But then you're also saying no to all the arcane mysteries of all of humanity.
I know, but how deep do I want to go?
Forrest, you're in.
Hi, what's up?
Yo yo,
Hello.
How is everybody?
we're good.
Good. How about you?
It's fine day. But yeah, I think the reason I wanted to join in right now is because I was what you were saying resonated with me while reading the story is that um it's not so much ultimately a story of Jack the Ripper as much as it's a story of the history of London in particular, but like it comes off to me as a story about the history of uh of civilization in general.
Mm.
And the idea of like and I see why you guys chose it, because Luis is always talking about like the importance of like the particular importance of like symbols, like the semiotics of truth and whatnot, especially like in terms of I guess when we were talking like metaphysical things, metaphysical realities, and like the story between Dawkins and Jordan Peterson was like one that you guys invoked, that sort of they're not communicating, where he's trying to, you realize that he's trying to talk about the idea, the symbol. And also to your point, Lewis, like the idea that this is all like real stuff about London, like I think, yeah, that's absolutely the case as well. And I think DC and the Alan Moore definitely, I guess he's like a lot of his stories feature like ideas about the Masons, but also like that just goes to show that like many major cities have a lot of Masonic imagery in them, because a lot of the
Yeah.
architects that built them are part of like, I guess what you could call this early fraternity, like OG labor union of Masons. And
Yeah.
like but that story in chapter 4, I think, encapsulates the whole like theme of the story to me. The that this is about the civilization, the weird, the weird universals you find throughout like the history of civilization, and then London in particular, and how
Yeah.
these are like the moving forces to history. It sounds kind of like freaking schizo posting, but I think that's one of the big themes of the story.
Totally agree. I wanted to ask Lewis about something. It's
Go on.
weird, because Alan Moore is obviously from the north,
Yeah.
and there is a big north-south divide, and there is a big. I think he's very class conscious in this as well.
Yeah, he is.
You
Yeah.
know, and we were trying to figure out like how much he's. I mean, this is a big discussion here in England, like the idea of like, are you a royalist? Are you not? Like this is a discussion that I mean, before coming here, I realized, oh wow, this is a massive deal for the common English folk, right? And I
Hmm.
wonder how much of that you particularly Lewis, being from the north as well, this idea of like the class consciousness in the story, because I feel like he's a bit, even though he's talking, I totally agree, in this realm of symbolism and metaphysics, which I think it's even the idea of violence as this thing that reincarnates and time. I mean, I love all of that, but I see also this little bit like, and you see that in Jerusalem as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's interesting that I never thought about is like the perception of how people may read the novel, because
Yeah.
I mean, because oftentimes like whenever stories are from the place that you're from, it's like, oh, I have an insight into this, and then you get to hear
Yeah.
other people talk about it. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. By the way, quick shout out to Alan Moore, because the town that I am from is mentioned in the novel right at the beginning. They talk about Stockport. That's where I'm from, and he says, people from Stockport, they only care about their trains. We'll stick to our barges. And what's
True.
yeah, and what's great about that is like Stockport has like one of the major train stations of the north, and that's about it. But I really like. I can't think of like any other major piece where I've actually heard Stockport mentioned, so I'm very happy with that.
Represent Stockport.
What's interesting is like with the north-south divide, there's also this weird divide, because it's not even just a north-south divide. You have London, and then you have the rest of England.
Yes.
And you being here, like, you can see that clearly also.
And this is a phrase, just so a point to people as well. This is a phrase that you hear here on the news. Like you have London, you have the rest of England. You have to make it so it's not anymore London and then the rest of England.
Yeah.
Like it's a big political discussion here.
It's weird, because like even just geographically, even just
Absolutely.
the layout of England. Like we had a little impromptu voice chat during the week, And like I was saying to Esteban, like we actually figured out that the state of California is larger than England by I think like 2 times the size. And then you have this incredibly small country, and London is just this absolute mega metropolis that when you're in there, it's like how the fuck, how did this even fit in England?
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
feel it, don't
Yeah,
you?
you feel like it's so big, and you know what's funny as well? Because I wrote this down on my notes, and there's this idea in From Hell, like a lot of the panels are quite vertical, which is not very common in comics, right? You don't have that like long elongated panels, but it feels like London.
Yeah,
London
it really
feels
does.
like that. This absolutely claustrophobic place, but at the same time there's this weird verticality to it because it's like how does it even fit in England?
Yeah.
I totally agree, and I think the art style like kind of represents that.
Yeah, and it is like London is it's this massive sprawling space, and it's so weird because like like England was like the country of the 1800s, and it's not even that England was the country, it's that London was the bedrock of the 1800s, and then the US took that over. But it's just this case of like how do you then explain like the idea that this for a brief period was such a bedrock of Western civilization, when at the same time it's also like in this limbo state where it's kind of like a medieval fiefdom that's just been dragged into the modern world. It still has all this like this arcane. It's a medieval kingdom essentially, and I think that one thing that I thought of actually as I was going through it was, okay, so from a perspective of an English person, being from the north as well, I realize that the people that I'm probably closer to all of the absolute lowest caste within the story when you see
Absolutely.
when you see like all those absolute like when they're pissing on the street, when they're vulgar and all that, that is a large demographic which I'm way closer to
Yeah,
than any of the main characters. And I like I do mean that. And I think that most of the people within England, it's like it's a weird class divide because it's not like absolute base poverty that we have here, but it's such a distinct and strange demarcation of, okay, you have London people and then the rest.
Yeah.
For the overwhelming majority, I would say.
That is very interesting, isn't it?
And put it this way, I know like when Spencer was saying about Alan Moore, this idea of like he's putting a spell on the Masons. He does have a bit of wit about him, like an almost nihilistic wit, because he is also an anarchist. And I remember actually one of the things that I did find out was when the Queen died, he did an interview like 6 days after, and they were asking him about the monarchy, and he was saying, some of the people that I know that work at food banks said the food banks have closed in commemoration that the Queen has died, and and he said, and I'm sure that that's exactly what she would have wanted. He does have like
Yeah.
a dry wit to him.
It's a very northern wit as well, which is very different than like that pompous, style of like speaking that sometimes comes from the south of England. The north has this like, I don't know, even when you see it on like the TV, when they want to make something a bit more homely, or they want to hit home that this is a product for the people, they will get like someone doing the voiceover that has your accent, for example, like
a northern accent.
a northern accent, which is a bit more like a simpleton type of thing.
It is. It's like, oh, you can trust this person a lot more. They probably make a good cup of tea.
Yeah.
But
anyway, let's go back.
Going back to the novel, going back to From Hell, I'm actually very curious, just because the thing is, this is, and I know that Jay is going to say perhaps again. This is a conspiracy theory,
Yay.
essentially. This is quote fictionalized history, and I would like to hear people's perspective from the narration of what they think about this interpretation of, we're going to physically show Jack the Ripper. There's not going to be a mystery. We're going to lean into this idea that we know who he is, and we're going to play it as such. What do we all think about that?
But I'll go first, I guess. Yeah, I obviously this to me, I mean, in more ways than none, the first thing that this emphasizes is that the story is not about necessarily.
Where's he gone?
One
You
second.
muted yourself.
That it's ultimately not about like the it's not about the mystery of Jack the Ripper, but more so what we're talking about. That this is a story, kind of like you said. There's a sociological context to it and a historical context to it. The idea of, well, what's happening in London, and the idea that it's an elite conspiracy theory of, that you cannot allow this 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 these the child of the prince or whatever, and you can't allow these people to bribe the elites, um and the idea that that were revealed to him first is that it is a conspiracy theory, but like we said, I don't, it's not as important as, oh, this is actually who Jack the Ripper was. What's more
Yeah.
important, that this is a story about the queen's physician harassing class prostitutes, and feeling that it's part of his obligation in history, it's part of his essence to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Brian, I just brought you in. Feel free. Brian?
Brian, you're muted.
Oh, wait, he's typing.
Oh, he's having mic trouble.
Jack the Ripper got to him.
It's the Masons, dude. They
I know,
can't
yeah.
let us talk about it.
Like, as soon as we start talking about all the shit, like, stuff just doesn't work.
Before Brian goes, I do want to say also that I wanted to mention that supposedly the other thing that's true is that in the London police force, not just like these architectural things that Lord Hawksmoor was like a Mason, because that's just obviously true, but that the London police and like a lot of people close to the royal family were also have like very Masonic ties. So this is also
Yeah.
something that's just true. So like the idea that like these levers of power are like infiltrated by by the Masons. I mean, that's a common conspiracy, but also like
Yeah.
it is true. The London police and obviously most architects are going to have Masonic ties. The idea that they're part of the history of power.
I mean, like, if you just go on, if you just look at like who throughout history, like contemporaneously and all throughout the investigation, the suspects of Jack the Ripper. I mean, there were murderers around there, and like some immigrant murderers that were like harder to trace. But at the same time, they were also saying, okay, what about like all these artists and these painters and like these journalists that are really interested in like black magic and occultism? And these are like
Yeah,
all
like
the
Seaver.
yeah, they're
yeah.
all the official suspects, and it is very strange because there is also a point that Prince Albert, he was also like one of the main suspects of Jack the Ripper, because everyone seemed to have all like people that shouldn't know each other. All that happened was they were like, oh, everyone here seems to be part of this kind of strange group, or they all have these odd connections with one another, and I think that's like fundamentally the thing within the novel as well, which is this idea of I mean, like the amount of times that Gull decides to just like he contemplates on what is this idea of history, and he comes forward with this idea that history it's like this emotionless entity, but it is something tangible, and all it is, it's just something that has to be crafted, and I can't remember the term that he uses, but it's something like the people that create history, they're the architects, and it's almost like the way I see it. It's like I keep bringing him up every now and again, but it's like this Kierkegaardian vision where like Kierkegaard came forth with this idea that the only reason that human beings create anything at all is because we're bored, and that means everything. So even the idea that like civilization itself, the only reason that it arises is because of boredom, and I think that there's a point within the novel in which like Gull kind of puts forth this idea that history must exist, but it must have an architect behind it, and the people that create that, they are I can't remember, but it's something about the only thing that's valid for the face of the ultimate architect, which is God.
Well, this is interesting because the grand architect is how the Freemasons call God as well in their in their, I mean, I wouldn't call it an ideology, but their studies, right? They call it the great architect. So, and the symbol that they have of like that, I don't know how to say that in English.
It's a compass, isn't it?
It's a compass. Yeah, is to do with that, the idea of like the building of history. In I again, Jay's gonna know that too. In War and Peace, there is a big section of the book that is also involved with the Freemasons, and you can learn a lot about it through Tolstoy's accounts of it, through a character that gets involved with the Freemasons in a way. But it is the idea of the great architect.
Yeah,
I think,
Pierre is a Freemason, the main character
yeah,
of War and Peace. Hmm.
yes, exactly, yeah. So in the Alan Moore in an Alan Moore fashion, I think he's taking even that's something that it would be so like base in a way, not based, base in a way, like this very simple idea and just taking it to like 20, 100,000%, like he would, you know. So I think almost really like there is a magic, reverse magic there, like if you know, if you feel me, like in a symbolic way. I find that interesting. But something else I wanted to talk about, which maybe you guys also have a idea about it, is the idea of reincarnation and violence. Um, this idea almost like that violence is this entity that is present, and it really, because we were talking earlier and then I googled it, and there was like this idea that now there was like this DNA about who is Jack the Ripper, and maybe they found the DNA sequence of the person connected to da, da, da. And I was like, but does it really matter, right? Because now what Jack the Ripper is, he is a myth above all truth. He is now man and myth, right? And this idea of violence being something that could be perpetuated by whoever, right?
Well, I still think that even the idea, if they came forward and said, okay, we have 100% DNA evidence on who Jack the Ripper is, I still don't think that's enough to fully embody who and what Jack the Ripper is.
Exactly, yeah. And would people even accept that as truth? If we were able to actually have like the certainty, would we even accept that as true? You know, because it became something so much bigger. And I think that Alan Moore is dealing with that in such a spectacular way. I have to mention there is a very weird underground YouTube channel going on now, and the guy has been getting traction a bit, and I think he is. I mean, he must be schizophrenic or something, but he goes around London trying to show like Freemasons are, and like, you know, how London is a bedrock of occultism and all that. And a lot of the things that he is showing are also things present in the novel. So in the graphic novel. So it's kind of interesting to feel like there is in us this thought also of, you know, like this conspiratorial thought that goes way beyond truth, like that it's just something that sometimes we can never really fully encompass, like, or understand reality, right? So, and you really do get the sense here in England, you get a sense of history that you don't really get necessarily so much in other countries. Like you can go and like a stone would be here, like, you know, like, and it would be like engraved. You know, you feel that so much here, and especially when you go to London as well.
I think you're reminding me of like a very good sequence. It's also that fourth chapter where he's telling the carriage rider about like, what do you know what happened to like build that, like 6 people died. Funnily enough,
Yeah.
like the movie is fucking hilarious. Like I told you, one of the movies that I could not finish because of how bad it was. But it's like when when Gull commits like his first murder, he just puts the mouth, he puts her in the carriage. He's like, and he shows her an obelisk, and she's like, "What's that?" And he's like, "You know how many people died to me?" And he like stabs her and fucking like kills her. But like dude, I love. I was thinking about it through the story, but I love Gull's like freaking schizoid is a like
Oh yeah,
his love for, like you said, that he feels like he's building history, right? He's like an
yeah,
architect of history, that, and that the, what is the fourth dimension, that all time exists at the same time, that it's all made out of curves. So like, you know, that we're like building, we're all part in and all building like history together, which you know, which makes Gull like giddy. I think the thing that's weird about Gull is that it could also be like a hallucination, because he had like a head trauma, right? He had like a seizure like early
Yeah.
in the story, or like a stroke. Because by the end, Golf says that he's like seeing God like welcome him because he like achieved. he sees like the great Masons. He sees like freaking Solomon and Ozymandias like welcoming him to heaven or whatever.
But
And which is
he sees it early as well. Like I think our
yeah,
first introduction before we actually see him, because it's all POV and we're seeing the story of his father, and even like as it's I mean the whole thing about Gull is that whether he's just written that way or whether he's interpreting his life that way, is that there's just this thread of ultimate destiny, like it's destined for
yeah.
him to be this way, to the point that I mean before he's even committed the murders, he it's almost as though he's seeing what he will be and he's constructing that as such. I mean, like an obvious parallel is like with Blood Meridian. We've got this idea like a character of the Judge again, who's someone who's like, okay, everything that I do is for a reason on a cosmic level, but then the question of free will kind of just goes completely out the window, because I will construct things as they are, but no matter what, they will be that way anyway. And because it's like the way I see it, it's like, when like
Mhm.
like you said, Gull gets all giddy about like this idea of, oh, I'm crafting history. It's also that idea because when he goes through this like arcane knowledge of what London is, it's this idea like he goes through Roman obelisks and then he speaks about Boudica and the Vikings, and he talks about Osiris and the sun and moon gods, and it's this idea. Then he goes to like Christianity and everything. And
Mhm.
it's this weird thing because it's like, okay, yes, this is the thread of history, but as he's explaining it, it does become this convoluted tapestry that's almost impossible to keep up with, aside from someone who does sound like very schizoid. And like the only rational conclusion that you can come to is that, so essentially history had to be something. We just we just happen to be living in the constructed narrative of what people came up with of that history. It ultimately
Mhm.
it could have been anything.
That sounds very, very Moorish. That sounds very
Yeah,
in line with Mr. Alan Moore. What he would
yeah,
think of. It's like an ideology like historicism, a very
yeah,
postmodern idea that like history is constructed. There's actually not like a truth to history. And I think the other thing that I wanted to mention too was that ending, which Alan Moore is like, oh, the author, like if you look at the notes, it's like the author leaves this
yeah,
purposefully ambiguous. But I think like it's clearly the case that this is the last the our story of history, which is incorrect, which I think is another along your point, the idea that one of the victims is actually a misnomer and it's actually someone who got away.
yeah,
And it's someone who got away and like shunned, is able to shun an evil spirit from like affecting her life. You know what I mean? Because like
yeah,
when Gull when it's just like the Gull head going around and like even like kills the carriage rider, he makes him part of Masonic history. But she's able to like willfully like shun, basically like in Gull's mind, like the force of nature, the force of God, because
but
Yeah.
she can
what's
see him.
what's interesting, because like for me, I remember the first time I read From Hell, and it's like that climax for me, it was like really life changing. This idea of this kind of cyclical form of storytelling where I was reading it, I was just thinking, okay, everything that's occurred in the novel so far, like from its use of light and dark, from the what is the fourth
Mhm.
dimension, to like everything just coalesced at one, and you realize, oh my god, like everything,
Yeah, it has a crazy mirror.
yeah,
It's
it's
great
like
writing.
everything has a meaning, and at the same time there's no meaning at all, and it's like everything is important and at the same time it doesn't matter, and it's like completely cyclical. And like one of the things that I love about the ending as well is because when he starts to like go into the future, that like beginning from that scene where he kind of sees himself in like a modern office and he stood around, and then
Yeah.
he talks about this idea of this cyclical reoccurrence of violence that reemerges like almost like a Fibonacci sequence. And
Mhm.
one of the people that he shows, so the people that aren't in the UK, they may not know about this. So one of the people that he shows in that is Peter Sutcliffe. So Peter
Right, a
Sutcliffe,
serial killer, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
specifically a
Mhm.
famous serial killer
In the
here,
north.
but he was known as the Yorkshire Ripper. and he went around and killed prostitutes, and no one knew who he was, and there was this massive mythos about who's this guy that's stalking women. Oh, it's the same as Jack the Ripper. It's this ghostly monster, and we can't capture him. We end up catching him, and he's almost a midget, and it's fascinating, like this idea, the story, because like Louisa said as well at one point, it was like about this idea of Gull and or the royal physician. Was this theory ever disproven? And I said, the thing is, it's that Jack the Ripper himself was never proven, which I think is the major issue.
Mhm.
And I think like this idea of within true crime. I mean, we've spoken about the like loads of true crime cases, and Esteban mentioned it in here as well. This idea that there is something about the mystery, there's something about the mythos, that a lot of stories deep down we like the idea that we don't know what it is, because we can come up with a story that's so much grander, that is explained more through like fucking like esoteric biblical scripture, rather than, oh, it was just some guy that did it.
Motivations and tragedy, characters,
Yeah, a narrative that we can actually abstract, rather than a narrative that's just normal.
Isn't it also that Alan Moore gave like a subtitle to this as a melodrama?
Yeah.
And just now it occurred to me is also that, like, because you think of the Victorian era, you think of something like like very rational. You don't think necessarily of all this metaphysical thought. But at the same time, there was a big proclivity too for occultism and the esoteric. Almost like as a counterpoint of like this technological advancement of the time as well.
Well, wasn't it also the pre-Raphaelite movement at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this idea like of, I mean, we have so many vanguards at the time as well. Like this idea of returning to something quite quote unquote romantic. And I find it funny in almost, I mean, it's in very Alan Moore fashion, the idea that he would call this a melodrama when it's like an extremely conspiratorial story, like extremely violent. I wouldn't say it could be even classed as a melodrama, but I think it's a very funny satirical way of looking at his own work as well. Yeah. Anyway, but Brian,
do you want to give it a go this time?
Hello, am I in? Hello.
I hear you.
Okay, yeah, I just switched to my phone. I couldn't figure it out on my laptop. I'll figure it out later. But yeah, to touch on the point of melodrama, I feel like the first chapter feels very melodramatic. I would say, probably the most melodramatic thing I've read from Moore. This is probably like the fifth book or graphic novel I've read from him, and yeah, it does go into like a conspiracy kind of after that, because we do find out who uh Jack the Ripper is, and I looked into it a little bit. Gull was a suspect, but not like not a not a big one. You know what I mean? He isn't like at the top of the list, but the way Moore presents it, it's like very compelling to why it would be him, mostly because of the surgical precisions of the killings. Yeah, this reminded me a lot. I guess if I had to like equate it to another piece of work, it's hard not to think of David Fincher's Zodiac, just because of how meticulously researched parts of it is. But of course, it goes into more fantastical territory, and especially since
I
how
see
you
that.
guys
I think I
stated
caught that a couple times while watching.
how more like definitely said, okay, we're gonna do it from the perspective as if it was Gull or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw it. I don't know if it was like recently how they're saying that they know who Jack the Ripper is now through DNA. I forget who it is, like some barber or something like that, or a butcher or something. And
Yeah, it's a Polish barber who was schizophrenic, who like was institutionalized while they were investigating, which
yeah,
is why I couldn't find him.
I don't believe that it was him though, you know what I mean? Because the evidence is not, I don't think it's strong. Like it was like based off of a scarf, that they found. And
DNA from the scarf, yeah.
yeah, and it's like for one of the prostitutes, it's like it was the scarf would have been too expensive, and it was just in the care of some people for like 130 years. It's like who's anyone's DNA could have got on that. Whatever. That's not the point. But like I wanted to say like it almost doesn't really like more does like say okay this is goal, but I think the way the story goes it doesn't even really like how you guys were saying doesn't even really matter
Yeah.
who it was because by the fourth and final I mean by the ending it's like with the fourth dimension and everything it's just like these cycles of evil that prop up like there was evil before and there's evil after him and it's just like Jack the Ripper was just another faceless evil that props up throughout history. You know what I mean? It'll keep propping up. And what's interesting about the fourth dimension is that so you goal keeps popping into for throughout the story up until like the ending. He keeps like popping up into like it looks like modern day like London, you know, from when the book was written. You know what I mean? It looks like modern day like London that you're looking at it through, like
Yeah.
when he comes through. So it's just like I had this thought. I was up pretty late last night reading this, so I don't know if I was like sleep deprived, but I had this thought. It's like us reading the book is almost like just bear with me for a second. It's like we're in the fourth dimension reading the book, you know what I mean? And like popping like back and forth through the novel, like just how like goal is like popping back and forth through time, you know what I mean? I saw a little meta as when you're reading the book, like you know, you could just pop open a book and pop back and forth. I mean, I thought a little bit in the middle. There's like so many characters. I was getting there is times where I was getting confused as who was who, and I was
Yeah.
like, I would like pop back and forth, and you know what I mean, and just like the nature of reading comics, like you turn to the next page, and every so often your eye will wander. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You might see something ahead that's kind of like the fourth dimension when he's like popping like back and forth through time. You know, it's very like that last chapter is very like Doctor Manhattan, like
Yeah.
how he's
Definitely.
like stating like, oh, now I'm here on this date and what's it called, and then I appeared here and there, and then like how he gives like insight to was it Levinston to write no, what's his name? Stevenson to write Dr. Jekyll and
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah. Oh,
Hyde.
Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yeah, Robert Louis
Stevenson.
Stevenson.
Yeah, and then what's that artist that drew Blake? Is it William Blake that drew that something the flea or something? That drawing that he keeps referring to. It's like chapter like
Yeah.
10 and
Yeah.
then we see it at the end. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like this idea. I was kind of thinking a little bit of the Judge and Blood Meridian, like just this like force of evil that will always exist and like persist through time. You know what I mean? Because like when he like gives himself up at the end, I was like taken back. Wasn't expecting him to be like, yeah, it was me. You know what I mean? It's kind of like more. It's I was like, oh, all right. Like I
Yeah.
thought it was just gonna be like we weren't the main character was never gonna find out who he was, just like how we never know, or you know, in reality we don't know who he
Yeah.
was, but kind of gives it up and kind of like I don't know, like where do you go from there? It's just like a hopeless thing because it's like what are you gonna do? Go against the monarchy and stuff like that? It's just like their hands are tied and there's nothing you can do about it.
I just to interject real quick also is I don't know if it's been mentioned yet or if we mentioned it the first time. It's funny you mentioned Blood Meridian again, but that Blood Meridian is very heavily inspired by like Masonic myths, images.
Hmm.
Okay, say that again. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh no, no, nothing. I was just agreeing.
Oh, yeah, but Blood Meridian is very heavily inspired by Masonic images and themes, and like the parable of the harness maker and the uh,
Hold on.
Masons are coming.
But yeah, so just to mention that one right there.
I mean, I always actually interpreted the ending as well because we kind of talk about like the identity of him as well. I think it reaches the point where the irony is that like Jack the Ripper becomes so much of a mythos even within the time that by the time that Gull is put in the insane asylum, it's almost as like Jack the Ripper isn't even sufficient enough to be Jack the Ripper. It has to be something more than that. It's the nature of evil. It's something that can't be contained within the material world.
You know something interesting as well. If you look at that image, that is very famous illustration, the Nemesis of Neglect. I'm gonna put it on the chat so people can see it.
It's one of the chapters of the novel.
Yeah, exactly. But the original illustration from back in the days is such a strong, like almost I mean, it's hard to like really explain what that drawing is. It's like it just evokes a feeling. I,
It's interesting as well the fact that this is like an interpretation of the time, of like almost like the collective unconscious. Like
Yeah.
this is how they perceived Jack. Like I think interesting idea calling it the nemesis of neglect.
Yeah.
That's a very specific choice of words.
Exactly, but you know something that I think it's actually quite interesting. We just put the illustration on the chat. Something that I always thought was very interesting about this particular drawing is that it looks like he is suffering.
Yeah.
It doesn't look also that he's menacing, and then it looks like he's also suffering. And I think it's such an interesting depiction. It's so one is grotesque, but it has a little bit of like I don't know, pathos in it. I don't know. It's just odd. It's not just weird to look at. It just feels sad. And the name, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, obviously, like from an English perspective,
I mean, for me, like, because at this point, this goes beyond like nationality aspect. I just think this is an interesting thing that at a time when there is a serial killer present, that to refer to this idea of, I mean, we all have this intangible idea of evil. To think of it as a nemesis of neglect, I mean, that invokes an idea that something is being avoided within society, that there is a vengeful act of society on people because we have done society wrong by abandoning it in one way or another.
Mm.
I've always been confused about this picture too because it's from Punch, right? Which was it's like an old satirical magazine from the era, and so I guess I was confused why this was in a satirical magazine to begin with. So because it's like, is this a joke? Like like what are we looking at?
This is me going to make a midnight sandwich after a night of drinking, says Jay. It's yeah, I mean, like it is one of those things. I to go back to the novel as well, because it is difficult to like not bring in the true crime aspect of it, because it's a fundamental thing. But I think Brian was saying as well, this idea of when you do read the novel, it is one of those things that a lot of the characters kind of get interlaced with one another.
Yeah.
And I think this is also because we are dealing with a historical event, and to some degree these people are icons in and of themselves. It's like sometimes when you see an adaptation or any kind of adaptation of a pre-existing character, you get to kind of avoid certain expository modes of storytelling because this person, this era, it's ingrained in the public consciousness. And so in many ways, you don't really have to know the specifics of what's going on in the character of who the character is, because you already know fundamentally what they are, you know what they represent, you know what's going to happen to them, you know their position in the mythos. Nothing of that is going to change. And so I think that's kind of I think that's a bit intentional by Alan Moore in this, because he doesn't really characterize a lot of the prostitutes, a lot of the external characters. They're kind of just going around, and it's like, I think, again, we keep going back to chapter 4, but I think it's, the end of chapter 4 where Gull says the history is engraved in stone, and then it just shows a giant silhouette of London. It says engraved in stone. And I think it's this idea that, the tapestry of history in the past fundamentally it is unmoving. It's not something that we can change or alter, even as much as Alan Moore wants to play around with it in this and really stretch it to its limits. He still can only stretch it so far. It's still this idea that with all this, we still don't know who Jack the Ripper is. We still don't know the intention. We don't know the modus operandi. And I think that kind of weird limbo state of a lot of these characters that kind of come and go, and even again going back to the art style, they don't really distinguish themselves physically a lot. They kind of get or blur into this kind of scribble in the faces. The detail is worn out. I think that's intentional. I think you're meant to feel a bit of loss. All you ultimately do know is that there is an evil around, but fundamentally, I think that's all you have to know.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I wanted to mention, sort of on the other side, like obviously this is a novel that is more things than one all at the same time, like many of the great works we've discussed are. But I think that it's also like fairly political. I mean, we've been touching sort of the
Yeah.
idea of like the interaction between the classes in the story. But I think even the story in like classic Alan Moore fashion, it begins with like kind of a quite like political conversation where it's like what is it's like the inspector, like the working class pensioner
Yeah.
says that like labor's full of shit, and then like the psychic, guy who like is like into the idea of socialism, which by the way is an ideology that believes in the prediction of history, the idea
Mm.
of like and so like even from then when I first started I was like, oh, this is a classic little Moorism. They're discussing, the labor and the Tories, and the irony being, as typically is, like the working class man thinks that labor's full of shit.
Yeah.
Where, you know, and that's sort of the Whitechapel neighborhood. I think is like, I wonder where how is it today, but it's very famously like a low class neighborhood. Like even back then, this is probably like a pretty accurate depiction for what it was like. That it was like it was filled with well, obviously lots of immigrants, Eastern European, Jewish, Christian, but also like lots of like gambling, drinking, and prostitutes everywhere.
Yeah, it famously had, I think, like within the region, it had something like a 65 active brothels within the region where the murders took place.
Yeah. So, it's famous for this. And I like how, I don't know, maybe Alan Moore is being a bit of an ironist. He's, with the idea of like a monument to God and the history of God, with like the great Hawksmoor's freaking cathedral smack dab in the middle of like this
Yeah,
debaucherous neighborhood. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I think it's also funny how the queen, and I guess obviously this would be her oldest son, Albert Jr.
yeah,
But they're like they're like first of all, Albert is like an idiot, but also like the queen is also like she listens to this psychic and stuff, which
yeah,
for some reason in like higher classes in the UK, like because the UK actually has, I mean, to this day, but it also has this culture of like a stark aristocracy and stuff. But that's like, from what I understand, true. Like aristocratic families in the UK, like hodl around and like listen to psychics and shit, like, wasting their fucking time with all their old money.
yeah. It's semi true. Like the aristocratic class here is weird. It's that kind of class where they are asset rich but cash poor, and as such they leave these very very out of touch lives. And yes, they are subject to their own whim, because like there's old money and then there's like ancient money, and some of these families are just like money going back. The old generations had old generation wealth, and as such, they don't really partake in the world that everyone else does. There's like I'll find something on here. There's a very 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 good documentary about a family. I can't
I was just
remember.
thinking about
You're
that
thinking about
as
yeah,
well, yeah.
There's a family that like in the 2000s they were very very popular here. And it's because like they had like seventh generation wealth. They had this massive manor, but they were essentially as upper class people that you could get. But all of their mannerisms and the way that they acted and the way that they worked, it was just they were basically working class people, but not in like any kind of charming working class. It was like they were vulgar, they swore, they let their house go into ruin, and this has been in their house for like 700 years, and they had no money whatsoever. But it's fascinating to watch because they still have this idea of status that
Yeah.
they were upper class and like no one could tell them anything. They were rude, they were horrible.
It's quite funny that like, oh, what's the name?
I'll find them, but it's a fascinating
Yeah,
thing
it's
to
very
watch
funny.
because at the same time, it's like a lot of people do carry that, that British, what would you say, eccentricity about them
Yes, that's true.
within the upper class, where our eccentrics are like very very specific. I think. Well, as someone not from Britain, you might be able to describe it better.
Yeah, it's like they come across as homeless.
Yes, yes.
Like a homeless in a film, like a bad production that wants to describe like insert a homeless person, and that's how this type of people here in the UK come across. Like it's just weird. They mumble. They don't necessarily like finish the whole phrase. It's like
They're in their own world.
yeah, they are. They live in a completely different world, and they don't really need to partake in the common, like in the common. Yeah, it's just odd.
Like I think I may have said this before, but I remember having a very specific encounter with a person like this, and it was one time that I went down to London, and I went down to London to go see Bjork at the Royal Albert Hall. And it was literally, I remember when I got tickets for this, it's like I woke up, and this was at a time when, put it this way, I got tickets for it, it was £75, and that, like, this was at a time I was like, okay, this,
£75 was expensive
yeah,
back then,
like, this, bear it in mind, like, this is in, like, Royal Albert Hall, it's, like, with the full orchestra, it was the Volnicora era, it was a Volnicora string, so it was with the full orchestra. And like I was like, okay, I went in queue and there was like 10,000 people in the queue, and I'm waiting, thinking, I was like, oh yes, I got it. And I managed, like, because it was random seats as well, I managed to get in a box as well, like sat up top. So I was like, oh, that's sick. So I went there and thinking, so I was in a box with 4 other people. There was a German guy there, like people traveled for this, and it was like I was speaking to them dead nice, and then there was one old woman, and she was there, and like she looked like a Hanukkah character. And then she sat down at the back, like we were all talking, like we were all excited and speaking with one another. And then she was there, and I was like saying, "Oh, so you're excited to see?" And she had that bumbling accent, like that.
Yeah, they speak like mumbling. Yeah.
But she was like, "I don't really know her." I was like, "What?" She's like, "I don't really know her. A friend of mine got tickets. I thought I'd come." And it was like she looked so miserable to be there, and she was sat behind me. I was like, all right, everyone else is like dead excited.
She's definitely posh.
And bear in mind, like it was a Royal Albert Hall, so it was like an intermission in between as well. I swear on your life, I swear down, I swear on everything here. My cat is next to me. I swear, may this cat die if I'm lying. We're in between the show, and like I'm watching, and like I see, all I hear then, like about halfway through the show, it's like, I see, she's got a fucking newspaper out behind us. She's got a newspaper out that she brought with her. Just started reading it. Like in the middle, and then there's an intermission. We go. She leaves in the intermission. Don't come back. Just went home.
That is such a that's such a caricature of a posh person. Yeah. But they are like that.
Yeah.
They are.
They live in their own like
their own time.
Like some mad shit could be like if they were in New York on 9/11, they'll say, oh, yeah, I'm going home now, and then just not give a shit about anything that happened around them.
Yeah, it's very weird, and I do feel like the Alan Moore it's touching on these class differences, and even in the characters are like the working class characters in From Hell, like they feel much more human, even though and I understand what you mentioned earlier, this idea of like just brushing this almost like you're dealing with archetypes, so you don't really need to introduce it always, because you kind of know there's like when you have a hierarchy, then everyone knows where they stand in a way.
Can I mention something about that as well? Like this, I think that his perspective of the working class, even though he shows it with vulgarity, it reminds me a lot of like the dignity that someone like Odd Nerdrum would portray it with.
Yes, yeah, is a human dignity of people that have been through things, and there's like a bonding with it. It's almost like uh funny, we watched a film yesterday, The Headless Woman by
Lucretia Martel.
Lucrecia Martel.
I think Esteban has seen it because I know Esteban knows her work.
Yeah, and in that film, I mean, we were talking, and I was saying, like she has a way of portraying particularly the class divisions of Latin America that are so spot on in this, like, I mean, in the film, it starts with a woman, and she's obviously like bourgeois, and she hits something in the road, which is alluded to be a person, and it's just the impunity of the whole situation and how she goes about her life, and almost like she's losing her mind. But it's not this like dramatic she's losing her mind type of like extremely dramatic way. It's almost like she's aloof. And I think this portrayal of, like, like Hanukkah does it too. These people that are living in almost like this liminal non-human state in which they're not necessarily so tied down to reality. I think Alan Moore shows that too. And I mean, do you know if he was brought up working class? Probably.
Yeah, he was working
Probably.
class.
Yeah. Even the way he speaks is very like,
Yeah.
And I think also it goes like, Forrest was alluding to the idea of socialism in history, and it's so true. This idea of like this absolute Marxist idea of the way history is portrayed. And in here, in Alan Moore, he almost goes like completely like towards his anarchist side, Like he doesn't give credence to that, but there is still credence to the human spirit. And I think you feel that throughout his work, even when you see like something like Dr. Manhattan, which is like this, we also dealing with like these dimensions of time and all that, but it's like this, I don't know, you don't feel that from characters like that, you know what I mean? Yeah, so in The Headless Woman, you do feel this like class division. Does anyone want to say anything else about From Hell? We've been talking for a while, so I was thinking maybe about the art style. Maybe you guys have a completely different observation, because I feel like we touched upon some of the major themes.
I got a question.
Go for it.
Just in terms of it, so Alan Moore, I've read Watchmen years ago, and then From Hell, this was like my first one, and I really want to pick up the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Okay.
And
I love the League.
basically just about him and his personality. He doesn't. What was it that happened? Maybe someone knows better, because I was trying to look, that he doesn't want to attach his name to anything. You
Oh,
can't
yeah.
you can't get him in the credits. Like, was he felt like he got betrayed in some
Are you
deal
talking about the
licensing his
movies?
work? Yeah.
Well, they're all terrible. I don't know.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
don't even think it's even about them being bad. I think there was like whatever deal that he got, he just didn't want his name on any of it. He was
Well,
like,
what
don't
was
know
the
what they
first
paid him.
adaptation? Was it From Hell, the first adaptation, or the League of
Probably
Extraordinary
From Hell.
Gentlemen? Yeah, it
It
looks
might
like
have been From
I
Hell.
saw the trailer. It looked rough. I've never
Dude,
even heard.
please watch it, please.
To be honest,
Like,
this is
just
like
as an experiment.
this is my fifth Alan Moore graphic novel, and to be honest, I've never even heard of it before this. You know what I
It's
mean?
the brothers who did Shaft, I think. Oh no, it's the Menace to Society brothers. I don't know.
And was it called? And it's probably I don't know. It's hard to dethrone Watchmen, but it's probably the best one I've read. To be honest, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's hard to say because Watchmen, it's like so tied to like comic books, and like a lot of the point of Watchmen is like you have to be like up to, like you have to know a little bit about comic books. Like that's like the reason why it's like so like I guess you would say like transgressive to the medium and stuff like that. And then V for Vendetta, I remember liking a lot. I only read it once, but The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is like one of my favorite, just because it's like I find it so funny. Volumes 1 and 2. I don't know if anyone's ever read them. It's like a lot of that dark humor, wit, and stuff like that. It's like the literary Avengers. It's kind of ridiculous, but I
Oh,
mean, I,
yeah.
I
The
really
other
like
thing I
it.
wanted to mention was that I don't know if you guys will agree. I think you were kind of alluding to it, where you were like that Eddie Campbell doesn't like to call his illustrations like shots or whatever. Like he wants to create. He believes in a graphic novel grammar that's like unique to it. But I
Yeah.
do remember reading this and thinking that this has the language of a motion picture. Like
Absolutely.
the images in the graphic novel to me were like, oh, this looks like a movie. Like even
Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know,
I,
the
I
first
I
person
agree.
sequence and then the next chapter.
You know, that's actually a criticism people have in comic book community. You know that like what's it called with Alan Moore is that his stuff doesn't feel very comic booky. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
which is not an issue for
It
me.
feels like it has the visual grammar
Y-
of a
Yeah,
motion
as a
picture.
film, you know what I mean. I don't think it's mostly with Alan Moore they have the issue with. I think it's with the poor imitations that people try to copy his style in comics. You know what I mean? That like
Mm.
kind of like misses the point, I suppose. But yeah, when I was reading this, I was like, how do you like this feels like a storyboard. I don't know how you would fuck up the movie. And then I saw the trailer, I was like,
That's what I'm
yikes.
saying. That's like where I'm getting along. I'm like, this. You literally have the storyboard. What the
Yeah.
fuck? The,
That's kind of why that's like all the strong points of what's it called? What's his name? Zack Snyder's like Watchmen. I was like, well, eh, I mean, he's recreating some of the shots. It's like such a like mental disconnect with that film. I don't know. It's like the depth isn't there, but a lot. It's like I feel like he ruined it. Like you can't really make another Watchmen now because it's like the imagery is like all there, but like I don't fucking know. I don't think you can make that movie anymore.
I
You
have a
know,
theory though. I have a theory to why Alan Moore. I mean, obviously the films are bad. I haven't watched From Hell, but I can assume it's horrible. But I feel like it's also because when he works with a story, his stuff is so all-encompassing in the medium that he's working with. Like,
yeah,
it's so
it's true.
purposeful. Like, and I feel like it makes no sense to adapt something so round, so perfect. And I
Yeah.
yeah,
feel like that might be the reason because when he works with a medium, he's working with the medium. He's like
yeah,
he's as you
exactly,
said,
yeah.
yeah. In Watchmen,
It
he will like comic plays with comics and transgresses comics. Like it makes no sense to move that story outside of the comic book world, right? At least I don't think it makes any sense. That's why it's so bad. Because even if it looks like a storyboard, it's not a storyboard, right? It is a
no,
comic.
exactly. Yeah, it's everything it is made to be a comic book. It wasn't told to be any other story. You know what I mean? Like that's what the
Yeah.
paneling is in Watchmen. The reason why it's this 9 by 9 archaic like paneling, it goes back to like the early days of comics. You know, if you read like early Marvel or any early comics, it's like the panels are not dynamic. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's because the way it was drawn. You know what I mean? So that's the reason why he what's it called uses that format for Watchmen, but he carries it on. That's like in V for
Yeah.
Vendetta, it's the similar, and then From Hell, and the way it works in From Hell, because I wasn't thinking of it, I was like, okay, Watchmen does it because it's like an homage to old comics, and the color palette for what's it called Watchmen, you can say it's like garish. It's like fucking like it's like kind of ugly, but it's
Yeah,
like
I
Mhm.
mean,
it's
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 unique.
like
It
dual
stands
print.
out. Yeah, the
Yeah.
like the blue and the pink stuff. It's almost
Yeah.
neon, but it's not
Yeah,
dull neon.
exactly. And it's like homage to like old color palettes and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, Watchmen is brilliant, but what's it called? This I felt like it was just so like I don't know why he was doing it. Like I really love the what would you call it? Like the sketch like artwork. I don't know how you would call it.
Matching.
Yeah,
Matching. The
you know what I
matching
mean?
style.
I loved it. I read the black and white version. I didn't read
Same.
the color version, and I'm really glad that I did. You know what I mean? It like at first it's like a little off-putting, well, just because I this is not a style you would normally see in a comic or graphic novel, and no, you quickly get used to it. But I think it's like it's this whole like kind of like how some of the characters like blend into each other. Is it supposed to be like just like I don't know, like you're just like because the past isn't like defined, you know what I mean? So it's just like it's supposed to be like a undefined image almost, you know what I mean? Like we almost this is as good as we could peer into the past and this is as good as it looks. I don't know. But one thing
Yeah, I see that.
one thing I wanted to say about going back to like real quickly about like this is just a moment in time we're glimpsing into like where a big evil like took place. It's like how the novel starts with the two characters talking and we can't even hear what they're saying like for like the first few panels, but it's like so small and it's like scribbly, you know what I mean? And then they come
Yeah.
in and then you can start reading. And that's exactly how it ends too. You know what I mean? They start walking away and then you can't hear. It's just like a glimpse into this point in time in history. What's it called? And like where this evil took place, and it's alluded to that the next form this evil will take place is, I guess, in Hitler in World War II, because like the final line is like, "I fear another war is coming," or like one of the final lines is like,
Yeah.
yeah, and stuff like that. So it's just like, yeah, this evil propping up, and then what do you guys make of? Was it in chapter one of the early chapters where Goal is like going about his day and then it switches to like watercolor. You
It
get
does that a couple of times at the end of chapters, doesn't it?
yeah, where it's
I,
just or yeah, like the
I
art
think.
style will
Impulse.
switch
Okay.
like
Impulse, yeah.
and then sometimes it feels like it's just like I don't know if it's super well drawn or it looks like a straight up photograph at certain points too. It's like very rare, but I was like, is that a photograph turned black and white? I don't know. I couldn't tell, but I don't know. And then sometimes people are drawn so like aside from the hatching and the scribble style, like some people are drawn so like fucking like it looks not done. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
even
I'm
Yeah.
seeing
within
the
Yeah.
even
beginning.
within this style, is it supposed to be like these people like don't matter? I don't know. I don't know what he's saying with that, but I don't know. I like
I
that.
think
I like the art style.
I think there is like a level in ink and pen and ink, like you can render it to your heart's content. Like the more lines you add to a drawing. So when you're doing hatchings, like the closest the lines are together, the darker the feel. And sometimes he will use ink washes, or sometimes he will use a complete blackness, which is not something that you normally see nowadays in people doing in pen and ink. It's more like an old 19th century style.
Hmm.
But this unfinished scribble style is also because I mentioned right in the beginning. I don't know if you were here, Brian. Is
No.
because he uses a crow quill, which was essentially like the crow quill mimics the goose quill, which was used for calligraphy back in Victorian times, and is
Hmm.
not a nib that is usually used for drawing. Is a nib that usually people use for writing. So because it keeps the consistency of the dynamics of the line straight, so it doesn't have that like tapering effect that you see in like manga style nibs. So what that does, it allows him to really scribble and really like scratch the surface like they would in an etching illustration in like a stone print or something like that. So it mimics that like old school effect, which I think is like really,
Oh,
really interesting. And that's why the
that's
color feels so weird on top of it, because it makes no sense, right? But there's something that I wanted to say about Eddie Campbell as well, that because Faris was saying about the idea of adaptation and like his work and all, because obviously Alan Moore works with those 9 panel styles, like super vertical, but Eddie Campbell believed, like one of his philosophies of comic in drawing comics is that the drama should be resolved in the panel, and that's
mhm.
almost like antithetical to the way that Alan Moore writes.
Yeah, because there's so much detail.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like I feel like the two styles kind of converging. That's why I think From Hell is so great. Because when you see Eddie Campbell's other work, like it's much more akin to like the pacing is so different than this, but his style of drawing lends itself so well to like this the narrative style of Alan Moore. So it's like almost like a match made. Like it wasn't supposed to work like this,
Yeah, yeah.
because they almost have opposing philosophies. Yeah, I find it really cool actually.
Yeah, more so than any other more comic. There's these moments of I feel like just people walking around and gaining a feel like very what's the word man, what is it? It's escaping me like he's setting the tone like very well with just these panels of just like the city and people going from place to place and stuff like that. From my memory, you don't really get that a lot in more comics. You know what I mean? What feels like a more comic to me was it chapter 4? You know what I mean? With all like all the talking and like almost confusing like dialogue of like where the fuck is this going and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that one feels like very Moorish to me. What's it called? I was yeah, and I remember thinking, I was like, God, like, yeah, where is this going? And like all those monuments in what's it called, London are real, right? I just saw like a video, like there is
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
they are.
Egyptian obelisk just like in the middle of like London. And there's like obelisks
Yeah,
everywhere, which is strange in
If
itself.
you ever speak to people who are into like Gnosticism or Hermeticism or like Masonry, the obelisk is the fucking the phallus, the earthly phallus, fucking the sky, the ethereal god of the sky and shit. Like the obelisk is one of the most important symbols, and I think that's like I guess that's at the heart of some of the symbols in the story. But I mean,
Yeah.
George Washington's monument is a giant
Yeah,
Masonic symbol as well. You know,
Yeah.
and he was a famous Mason himself.
yeah. You know what's weird?
Um,
Yeah, they have like that. Do obelisks date back to
yeah,
Egypt?
like Egypt. Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
And like the city outside of what's it called? DC, the next closest one is like Alexandria, like similar to
yeah,
like
to
yeah, like
Egypt.
what the fuck is all that about? I don't know, but it's
But supposedly, if you know anybody who's a Mason, basically, if you any government building you go to, you will see like Masonic imagery because they
Yeah.
also lots of architects are Masons, obviously, and like so like it's just from what I understand, it's like surprising the amount of like Easter eggs that are inside of like government buildings that are just
Oh,
like
yeah.
part of they're just Masonic Easter eggs and they're just like everywhere. DC itself is a big like is a was like a l'enfant like it is a big like it is a it's itself a compass and a rule,
Mm.
and
yeah, isn't it
it
like
was built by literal masons like it was
yeah, isn't
built
it like a star?
with
Isn't there
intention.
like a star? Like the streets like
Yeah,
form a star or something? Yeah.
it's a compass and a rule, so
Yeah.
it's like it looks like a 5 point star also,
Uh-huh.
same concept.
The compass in the
Off the
rule,
top,
that's the oh go ahead.
I, I was gonna say, anyone who's in LA or anywhere within that region, because I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know because there are Scientology temples all over the place.
Yep.
Are there any links between Scientology and the Freemasons by any chance that anyone
I
knows
don't
of?
think so.
Okay.
I highly doubt it because L. Ron Hubbard was just a sci-fi writer who
Yeah,
like well so here
he's
the
he's schizoid
Masons will
in his own way.
tell you that Masonry is like thousands of years old when it really isn't. Masonry is really just like 300 years old. It's like
Yeah.
from the Enlightenment. Um, but like it's not like Scientology is. What's funny is Masons are usually like they're pretty. If you go to like our Freemasonry, they have threads talk about Alan Warren. They're like this fucking guy, man, ruining our rep, as if we needed any of the bad publicity we already got. Like, like but it's like he the science like L. Ron Hubbard. It's funny. There's a Scientology place like by me, but I'm in Miami. They're like on like the most famous street here, but they're like uniquely crazy because it's not even like Gnostic. They actually believe a fucking alien created the world. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
even like
It's not even a demiurge, and like and like they just straight up think that like God loaded people in like D8 747s and like sent them
And
to the
and,
planet.
and did a Thetan count?
Yeah, and the Thetans, the negative. He sent the negative spirits on fucking DC-8 Airbuses to Earth and shit. That's what we gotta watch. Battlefield Earth with John Travolta. Get the full
Oh,
scope
it's
of things.
great.
What's it called? I don't know if the Scientologists have anything with masonry, but here I'm in LA, in Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard. There is a giant
Yeah.
Scientology temple, and it's
Super
like pretty
famous.
elaborate. You know what I mean? But I don't know. The only like interactions I had with Scientologists are like pretty rude. Like they'll be like outside a temple. I mean, like passing out pamphlets on the street, and usually you just like whatever, like walk by them. And I've only been like harassed like by them when they're be like, "Oh, you could look at me when I'm talking to you." I'm like, "What the fuck? Fuck off, dude!" Like, I don't want your pamphlet. Like,
Do you know what Christian
Very.
Science is?
do
Oh yeah,
me?
yes,
we
yes.
do.
That have like the reading rooms and shit. There's a reading
Yeah.
Yes,
room
we
in
have one in my city.
yes, dude,
Oh
there's
my
a reading
god.
room like down the street from me in Coral Gables. I learned of Christian Science from the Costas Gabras movie Missing with Jack Lemmon. That he
Oh,
starts the
Oh.
movie in a Christian Science reading room. Like that's what he's doing when he finds out his son is missing. What a movie, am I right? But
uh,
like
I think where most of my knowledge about the Freemasons came from was like the schizoid ramblings of KRS-One for any hip hop
oh
heads.
yeah, of course. Knowledge reigns supreme.
Yeah, KRS-One just like shows up in like random Chicago community colleges and just like rants about Freemasons and how he's like a secret member and knows all their secrets.
So supposedly this guy got fucking killed in a initiation ritual by accident, which again probably not doing good for their PR. But this was like 15 years ago, and like obviously a bunch of like the Masonic shit is like known by now. It's not like the
Yeah.
cat's out the bag, the cat's not in the bag, as they would
Like
say
you
in
can look
Sweet
up the
Smell of
secret
Success.
handshake and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like he like I think in the ritual they like they swear you to secrecy. The initiation ritual is the one you see in From Hell. It's the same one where they put like the thing on your heart and they open your shirt and they blindfold you or whatever. And I think
Very live.
one of their initiation rituals they interrogate you because you have to be like sworn to secrecy, and so they like threaten your life, but it's like with a revolver, but it's like obviously empty, and like they make you they make you keep the secret. Basically you can't say it, and then they like shoot the revolver with the blank, and you passed. Anyways, there wasn't a blank one time, and like this lodge in like New York like fucking killed somebody by accident.
Are you talking about Alec Baldwin?
Well, yeah, they
Oh
Alec
my
Baldwin
god.
him. He freaking got Alec Baldwin.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah, that film was just an initiation ritual for the
Yeah.
Freemasons.
Yeah, she passed.
No, they all failed because they were all sworn to secrecy to not tell anyone.
They are they are like universalists 100%. Their idea of like they believe that like kind of like how he goes over in From Hell, that it's the through line to like all religions are like this contains the secret truths to like metaphysical reality. They're all right in their own way, sort of thing. Which is
So my
why
family
like
friend who is a Mason, when he talked about it, he said when they have a meeting, like everyone who's basically at the meeting, there'll be like there's a table, and on the table will be like all the books from like every religion that everyone at the table is a part of, basically.
mhm,
Oh god.
And they
yeah.
So
all
that's
spell
why at the end,
coexist.
when he like ascends to heaven, you see all the religious figures, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
They're all the master masons are like
Uh-huh.
fucking, Jesus, Osiris, all these like very important people, the VIPs of heaven, I guess you could say. But he the other thing I was gonna say is that fuck, I lost my train of thought. But hold on, someone else talk. Let me think about it again.
What if your train of thought was hijacked by Freemasons? About that.
True. True. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, who knew? In the
What they mentioned
Bible,
is gone now.
in the Bible, when they ask Jesus, like, oh, can one of us please sit at your right hand? He's like, nah, man, the son of the god, the sun god Ra, he's already there. He's already got the spot. Sorry.
That's what I was gonna say. Very anti-Catholic organization. Very like
Yeah.
Very.
and the Catholics. I think at one point, like Catholics were like losing a lot of like top tier members to Freemasonry, which is obviously heretical. And so they made their own like order, like knowledge enlightenment based order, which is like the Knights of Columbus. And the Knights of
Yeah,
Columbus are supposed to
yeah.
be like it's like Masonic, but you're Catholic. It's not heretical, you know?
I didn't realize there was like a religious like leaning towards the Masons. I didn't like. Is there? Do they consider it like a religion
So
or?
it's not
You have to believe in
if you
God.
ask yeah, if you ask them, it's not a religion, but there is a prerequisite, which is to believe in God.
Yeah.
Because the Masons 100% believe that that human beings are unique because a creator has instilled like will into you, and like you have to take responsibility for the things that you do. So
Mhm.
You know,
they
I'm
what happened?
noticing something here. Forrest, you seem to know an awful lot about Masonic secrets and what.
It was Blood Meridian, man. It was Blood Meridian. It was
So
funny.
here's how the initiation goes. So you show up at this address at this time, and they do this very specific thing.
It's funny. My grandfather was an architect, but he wasn't a mason. And I remember asking him. I was like, "You're an architect. You're from a place that noticeably has like a lot of Masonic people, which was like pre-revolutionary Cuba, very famous for Masons." And so I was like, why are you not? And he was like, oh, long story short, he thinks that like organization fraternities like that are bullshit, and that he was like a very individualistic person. So he was like, oh, fuck those guys. I don't like swear allegiance to those people.
And then he drove
Nice.
you around Miami and showed you all the obelisks.
Yeah, and he was like, look at that though. Look at that.
What's crazy here in the U.S., I don't know if it's like this over there in the U.K., but there's like road signs like with like telling you where like the Masonic temples or like
That's here in
centers.
Canada too.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, it would just
Yeah.
be like a street sign. It doesn't say like temple. It just has their the compass, their
It
symbol,
has the
and
compass.
it's just like and just
Rule.
like this way. It's like if you look for it, it's like everywhere. You know what I mean?
Fun
It's
fact: Billy Wilder, Freemason, Jewish and Freemason. He's double dosed. No wonder he's the goat, dude. Of course, he's got to be the goat.
No wonder all his films did so well. Mean but funny.
Oh man. Don't tell
love-
Kanye. Look, someone just put Kanye. You put the Kanye. Don't tell
bring it.
Kanye about them, bro. Don't tell Kanye about the Masons. That's gonna start a whole nother chapter in his life, dude.
Oh yeah, like the moment he finds out about like the Freemasons, like we're getting another 3 albums.
But like, yeah, Karos want Immortal Technique. Did you listen to Immortal Technique when you were younger? He also
Like,
like,
that one song.
what do you mean like, did I not rap the entirety of Dancing
Yeah.
with the Devil on the book every day
That's
in
right.
2008?
That's right. That's right. You talked about it on a podcast, I think once.
Yeah.
What was you were talking about it? I don't know if it was recently or I was listening to an old VOD, but you were talking about Dance with the Devil not too long ago.
yeah.
Oh, it was P Diddy. I think you were talking about P Diddy. You
Oh,
talk
he
about
did it.
Diddy, how he like shot someone in the club or whatever, and nobody said shit.
Oh like that's clearly a Freemason thing. Like Diddy went up to a club in New York, and it was funny because it's like the club was like at the it was like on the floor of what ended up becoming the worst hotel in New York City by like a country mile, and he just walked in there one day with Jennifer Lopez, shot someone, killed them, walked out, and apparently no one saw anything. And like, it was just, oh yeah, some other guy got arrested. So like if
Yeah,
you're
that's
talking about
crazy.
like swearing secrecy in like high societies, like there's a guy that can teach us a lot about it right there in the chat.
Yeah, that was the other one that was like the story. I think you talked about a story in there also that was like crazy to me, which was like that Suge Knight just like took over a business one day. He just decided it was his now. He just
Yeah. No, what was it? It was no, so it was so when he signed NWA, no, that was it. So this is the East Coast West Coast beef. So basically Ice Cube left NWA because he was concerned because they had a Jewish manager and he didn't like the idea of like a Jewish white man that was like profiting off of like, a bunch of black drug dealers from Compton and then all of a sudden like they were making money, but they found that he found like he was making millions off them. So it was like that was when like Ice Cube set up Lynch Mob, and then Death Row Records got set up as well. And Suge Knight went in to Death Row Records, and it was like he like basically he went in there where you've got all like of these white record producers, and he like would send over his friends to their house and be like, oh yeah, you live here, and they'd be like, yeah. He's like, okay, have a nice night, and then like leave them, and he would just turn people there to the point where like he just like broke the fourth wall and just walked in and said, yeah, this is my record coming out, and just smashed the place up, and like no one could do anything because it was Suge Knight.
that's nuts. Fucking yeah, Freemasons. That's just the leveled up version of that. There you go.
Oh, yeah. It's just gang warfare. Gang warfare rules the world.
Gang warfare. I mean, unironically, that's a truism in my book.
I
A
was gonna say,
fucking gang war.
seeing as how we haven't spoke about From Hell for like the past million years, should we go over to like the normal chat so everyone can
Yeah,
get
let's go
involved?
over to Norman chat.
Yep.
Yeah. Esteban, are you done recording? You can type because you're not in the chat.
He's typing.
Everyone say goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you all for listening.
Bye-bye.
Is there nothing that could be done for a widow's son?